everybody. Wrestling with the Future Radio Network proudly presents Kryptik Korner. Hello, everyone. I am Angelo DeCipio. I am your fashionably late host for this evening. I am joined by a cast of characters. Let me tell you what. We've got the creme de la creme, the best of the best. Introducing the good-looking man, upper left corner. This is Justin Carpenter. He is, I call him the guru because he kind of like has that guru feel. I like Justin. Justin's a very cool guy. Very deep, too. But he's got a very dry sense of humor. Like he's playing with his camera right now, and that I dig that a lot. Beneath Justin right now, not figuratively, like literally beneath him right now, is Shirley Bolstok. Shirley is a psychic and medium. She is also a highly accredited numerologist. She likes to play with numbers. She's the numbers lady. She's really got this thing about the number 8, though. We're going to have to discuss that because I think that's a problem with Shirley. We're going to have to talk about these 8.
The crazy 8s are definitely very, very important.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about it tonight, too. It's actually, Shirley, it's going to play in very deeply to what we're going to talk about tonight, really heavily. The pretty blonde-haired lady in the other upper corner is Mary Ann Howard, co-author of the book, The Shadow of the Baseman. It's right behind her. Great marketing, great placement.
Always with me.
Yeah, it's right. I know it's behind you too.
Mm-hmm.
And so was Paul and the rest of the boys.
Paul and the guys.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, and so Mary Ann is a resident kook. Let's just call her Space. She's a nut job, but we love her. And of course, Mike Messier, award-winning filmmaker, writer, producer, actor, director. Mike Messier is a Renaissance guy, kind of does everything, and he is was the first guest I ever had on a podcast, and he is my friend, and we hit it off, and he's still here. Mikey, how you doing, brother? You looking good?
Well, I had a long day at the post office sending you a copy of my book, Angelo.
Yes.
So it's on the way to you. And the guest is a great panel tonight. I'm intrigued by those Paul McCartney photographs and album covers, and everybody looks great. And looking forward to some great deep dive discussions with everyone.
Good stuff. We're going to start this one. Justin, I'm going to go right to you on this one.
Right.
Been thinking a lot about COVID. Been thinking a lot today about the Mandela Effect. Interesting. The 1960s were a really interesting time period. Now I know that you're a lot younger than I am, but you are also very studied in matters of the past. And so let's talk about the origins of what we call now today the Mandela Effect. It was at one point called the Manchurian Effect. The notion that you're remembering something that never happened or placing yourself in a place you never were.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially the Mandela Effect. The 60s were a really interesting time for that because it played prominently into the 3 major assassinations of that decade, which were John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
So, walk us through briefly in terms of the 21st century and in terms of the year 2021, how significantly, even today, does the Mandela Effect play out in our daily life, in our world, in the worlds that we touch?
Well, it's certainly a fascinating subject to look into because, like, for example, a big one is the book, the Berenstain Bears, and that book that was a children's book. And often people say it was spelled E-I-N, Berenstain, and yet when you try and find a picture of it anywhere, it's spelled A-I-N. And this is just an example to show, but the name was termed, I believe, from Nelson Mandela, and most people believing he died in prison, but in actuality he didn't die in prison. Well, depending on who you ask, but it's this phenomenon where we have this idea in our mind of something that happened, and then we go to look it up, and the historical representation, what's been written down, varies, which I think plays into this idea that time is not really a big it's not really real. Like we're experiencing consciousness, and we have time to use this sort of like comparative analysis so that we can compare from our past and see where we are, and what helps us to learn and grow.
Yeah.
But given that time isn't really real, the Mandela effect is this sort of the glitches in the matrix of where things happen and they don't necessarily mesh in a certain way. Like maybe it's hard to say what exactly prompts them, but something shifts along the way and these are just little clues here and there to point that time.
Quite
is very
interesting,
fluid.
Justin. It really, really is. Nelson Mandela, just for the reference of people who may be too young to remember who he was a South African anti-apartheid civil rights fighter. He was a freedom fighter, and passed away in recent years. It's remarkable if you think about the fact that when he got out of prison, or when he allegedly got out of prison, he looked a hell of a lot younger than he looked when he went in, which is, I don't know anybody who ages in reverse, but he looked amazing when he got out. Looked like he got in a facelift, a little nip and tuck. Looked, really good, nice haircut. Not what you would expect to see a guy looking like just spent 35 years in jail. But he looked amazingly well kept and quite handsome for a guy that spent 35 rough years in prison. So, what do you make of that, Justin?
It's hard to say, it really is hard to say what's actually happening here, because it's, on one example, you could look at it from this timeline shifting perspective, where there actually was some sort of glitch within the timeline, and that's what was responsible for that. Or you can also look at the prevalence of body doubles and the fact that they can and they have made swaps. As Marianne is very well aware, they've made plenty of these swaps plenty of times throughout history. So this could be another example of those sort of swaps happening. So it's hard to say.
My friend Mike Messier is chomping at the bit. Mike, you jump in.
Well, just to give a summary from my perspective, the Mandela Effect, there was, I believe in our timeline, as Mandela Effect researchers will use the term, on December 5th, 2013, which for me strikes close to home. December 5th is my birthday. So on December 5th, I believe the year was 2013, Mandela passed away. But a woman on the internet reported that she had a very strong memory of Nelson Mandela dying in the early 1990s while still in prison. And when she saw these reports of this death of Mandela, she could not believe it. She said, this guy's already been dead. He's been dead since early 90s. And she said that she saw Oprah Winfrey host a tribute special to Mandela, in which celebrities at the time, whoever the celebrities would be, came onto the show, and they were all wearing prison numbers of Mandela's prison numbers that he had in prison when he was being captive there for so long. And that the death of Mandela was like a cultural movement for equality and lack of segregation in South Africa. And she remembered this very detailed description and put it on the internet just to see what would happen if anyone else shared her memory. And guess what? A certain amount of people did. A certain amount of people like myself do not. But I have other Mandela effects that I've put on the Mike Messier YouTube channel. The biggest one for me was the thinker. The Rodin statue in Philadelphia of the thinker going like this, the nude guy with the jacked up muscles sitting on a rock. Marianne just pointed with her fist to her head. Other people remembered the fist on the chin, the fist on the forehead. Sometimes you see him and his hand is flat. That's the way it looks now. Now, there could be issues where there's different statues, perhaps, or tribute statues. But it's very confusing because what people are experiencing, and I'll give you two quick examples. If people have never heard of this, just remember what Rodney King said when the LA riots were happening in 1992 after his got beaten up by the LA police. Rodney King had a very famous quote. Think of that quote. Well, if you look up the quote on YouTube now, what Rodney says after those riots were happening is, can we all just get along for the old people and the children? Well, I don't remember that. I remember Rodney King saying famously, can't we all just get along? C-A-N apostrophe T. So
that's exactly what he said.
Well, if you look it up now, Angelo, he says, can we all just get along for the old people and the kids?
Well, it's interesting that you cite that example, Mike, because I have that piece of videotape.
Right.
I have the original. And what he actually said was, and I quote, can't we all just get along? Period.
Sally Field
said.
If I could just throw out another example to get everyone on the same page. Sally Field, the actress, first of all, there's some stuff with her name. Is it Sally Fields with an S, or is it Sally Field with no S? People debate that. Then there's the thing with Sally Field. When she wins an Oscar, I'm not sure for which movie off the top of my head, but she won an Oscar, and she's...
They like me, they really like me.
Well, right, and if you look at the quote that most people remember, like Angelo just said, you like me, you really, really like me. But if you look at the videotape, now she says something to the effect of, right now you like me, and it sounds off, it looks off, and I've caught, that's the Sally Field one is one of my...
It was manipulated, that's clear.
Well, if you look at my YouTube thing, I catch the ladies, Coda and Kathy Lee, quoting that quote, that famous quote, because these are pop culture things that people are remembering, very distinctively different, and it's screwing with people, and people just don't know what to say about it. So that's my input.
Shirley, coming to you, kid.
Well, there's several things that I remember also at the Wizard of Oz. Now, this is what I found very peculiar also in Tom Hanks' Life Was a Bunch of Chocolates and Forrest Gump. This is a big one. Now, this is what was very peculiar to me. I have an old video. I found it at a vintage store, and on the back it says, "Life was, was like a, life is like
a box of chocolates. Never know what you're going to get."
Yes, but when I turned on the video and I watched it, it turned into life was like a bunch of, like a box of chocolates. It's like the video itself changed.
Shirley, and I can tell you, you can clearly make the comparison to both because both are out there. And the original clearly says, and I quote, because I'm a movie file, I'll just say, Mama always said life is like a box of chocolates, never know what you're going to get, quote unquote. Okay. Now, this propensity, Marianne, for revisionist history, something you know an awful lot about, co-authoring the book The Shadow of the Bassman, the Paul McCartney story. Where say you, are we with this? Have we seen the last of revisionist history, or are we just getting started?
I think we're probably just getting started, and or it's been going on all along. We're just now becoming aware of it. Just like a lot of us are becoming aware of the death and replacement of Paul McCartney in '66, the internet has been able to bring us wonderful treasure troves of videos and pictures and comparisons and voice analysis. And now we have that at our access. We didn't have that 50 years ago.
You know, I'm going to go there. So I'm going to hold you up right there, kiddo, because I've been chomping at the bit for somebody to use the magic word tonight.
And which
I wrote it down. My magic word tonight, and I wrote it right here. Right? My magic word tonight, internet.
Internet. Yeah.
There we go. Let's talk about the internet. Hot damn, baby. Hot damn. Are we being given, and I'd be really curious to hear what Mikey and what Shirley and Justin think about this. I have a feeling I already know where Marianne thinks. Are we being given this plethora of information to dissect, or, as I suspect, are we being fed pre-manipulated information to choke on? Because I think that we're choking on this puke pile of information. that in large case and large quantities is misinformation at its pinnacle best. It's absolutely atrocious the amount of false information that we're being spoon-fed. Horrible. So Shirley, jump on that one. I'm really curious to hear what you think about that.
Well, I find this very interesting because there are several historical events that come to mind. The first one is the first terrorist attack of 1916 that was on the Statue of Liberty. I never learned this in school. I never heard anything about this. They said that they shut this crown down for, 100 years, but I have pictures of friends waving out of the crown that it was clearly opened up. The other one that gets me, and boy, I definitely want Michael on this, is the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I remember 4 seats, 4 seats. I remember McCartney in the front seat, John F. Kennedy and Jackie in the back. When did this turn into 6 seats, a 6-seater?
Well, let me, sure, and I know where you're going with this question. Let me just say, because that's a great segue into our show next week. We are doing a special, and Mike Messier is part of that special. We are doing a John F. Kennedy assassination special. Information has come to light, new information that I shared with a prosecutor. There were, in fact, 5 seats. Not 4, not 6, 5. There were the driver, who's there, I believe his name was Jack Spears, or to that effect, his name was Jack. There was John Connolly sitting next to him. In the center, there was what amounted to a child seat. They called it, I forget what name they gave to it, but it was an additional smaller type seat, dead center in the middle of the car. And then the back seats, which was one long seat. Okay. There were not separate seats in the back of that limo. It was one long seat with 2 people, Jackie and the president. So the answer to that is not 4, not 6. It was 5, in fact. I will tell you that. And so now I'll shut up and let you continue.
Well, when you look at some of the plethora, like I said, of different historical events. Now, one of the things that I also notice is the event of technology. Now, as we see on the internet that talks about technology, I do believe that it's very possible with the Mandela Effect that we have a different advance of technology in this timeline, which is possible. I do not remember jukebox radios back in the 1940s, but if you look them up, you can clearly see Frank Sinatra, Doris Day, a number of others, and that I never see this growing up in the World War II. You see them sitting around these old radios, turning them on. I don't remember video jukeboxes. Also, the films back, it seems to me that we had much better technology back around the turn of the centuries, especially the 20th century, where you rarely see glitches, you see color, you see many, many films that are old that are excellent quality that I've never seen before.
Well, let me say this, Shirley, because I can tell you a little bit about that. There were not video jukeboxes. There were, however, a prototype of, if you want to call it a quote unquote video jukebox, it was a musical kinescope. Now, a kinescope plays like a video. It plays like a film. Mikey understands what kinescopes are. And they were raw, and they were basic, and they were, primitive, for lack of a better term. But they were essentially what you might today call a video jukebox. They were kinescope. And there are, believe it or not, there are still a few of them around. And even one at the Smithsonian that still works, as a matter of fact. So continue.
So when I look through other series of history, okay, first of all, like there are certain things that I remember. Obviously, differences, of course, the Star Wars. No, I am your father versus Luke. I Am Your Father.
Yeah,
The other
absolutely.
one, and we should definitely talk about that one. The other one is, I always remember the Statue of Liberty on Ellis Island. I do not remember it on Liberty Island. Am I the only one who remembers it that way?
Well, in the interest of full disclosure, Ellis Island was renamed, officially renamed Liberty Island. So what you're referring to is two parcels of land that were at one point connected by a wooden bridge that are now two separate pieces of land. The statue sits on what's technically now officially called Liberty Island. Just off a half a mile, just off of Liberty Island is what was referred to as Ellis Island. In fact, the buildings where so many people came to this country, those buildings are still there. And many of them are being worked on and preserved. Go ahead, Mikey.
I always remember Ellis Island. I never even heard the term Liberty Island until she just said it right now on the show. So that's the thing with these Mandela effects, is they'll really drive you nuts. And you know, there's tons of biblical ones. One of them is, which animal do you remember lying or not lying with the lamb? Is it a wolf? Is it a cat? Is it the lion? Well, you know, on my YouTube channel, I discovered another book that cited the Bible as saying the lion and the lamb. But if you look at it now, I think it says the wolf and the lamb. It's very unusual.
That's Mikey. Let's throw that one to Justin. Justin, what is the correct derivation? Is it the wolf and the lamb or the lion and lamb? I remember lion and lamb.
Yeah, I remember lion and lamb, but I'm not 100% on that one. So
I understand it's switched to lion and wolf. The lamb is what changed.
Well, hold on, Miriam. Or does it depend on what interpretation of the Bible you're reading? See, that's one of the problems I have with the Bible, is there are so many interpretive versions of what is essentially supposed to be the inspired true word of God. So, you know, that's something you really don't want to fuck with, okay? However, there are people who fuck around with it all the time. You know, they change this word to mean that word, or they change whole passages, which, you know, you can take, I'll give you a perfect example. Take the King James version of the Ten Commandments and then compare and contrast that with the New American Standard version of the Ten Commandments. They read like two different commandments. They really, really do. So, you know, you got to be careful how much you screw around with, like, you know, religious scripture, particularly the Bible, you know. Answer your phone if you need to.
I'm going to throw it in the other room. I'll be right back.
There's so many discrepancies. You know, with this Mandela effect, it'll really drive people nuts once you go down the rabbit hole of research on it. And I know that the first week or so that I found out about the Mandela effect in the summer of 2017, I was just mystified and intrigued and fascinated and upset too. Because when you're talking about things like, can't we all just get along? That was talked about on the In Living Color show. That was a pop culture phrase for years and years and years. And you're telling me that my history is wrong. For Justin and everyone, the ladies, I would ask bring up the topic too, Angelo, here, that one possible Mandela effect reason why it's happening is this group called CERN, CERN, which is a government group, and apparently it's not a secret. They've been experimenting with black holes, making black holes on their research labs.
Absolutely.
There's also a connection. I believe it's Sally Field's brother, although I think it's been said either her brother or her husband, Sally Field, the actress. works at CERN. So some people wonder why there's a couple of Sally Field or Sally Field's Mandela effects, because she has this personal connection to the group. Nothing against her. But if they are making black holes, and they're so smug when they say things like, well, they're just little black holes. How can you make a little black hole? That's like being a little pregnant. I mean, you can't have a little black hole.
And it's a little bit pregnant.
Well, you're screwing with nature. I mean, if you ever looked up the Philadelphia experiment where they tried to do time travel and it ended up really killing people, apparently.
Which
these
was
soldiers.
A real deal, by the way. Mikey, thank you for bringing up Einstein's Philadelphia experiment. You know, there's some twisted fucking shit going on. Some twisted science shit.
Well, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. I think they asked him, the government asked Einstein to be a part of it. So
they took his basic information, toyed around with it, and screwed up royally.
And they ended
killing a lot of people and
landing in the middle of walls. They were in the middle of walls, literally.
Yeah, and that's for real. And there are actual pictures of that from the 1940s. It is a real thing that happened. Can't fake it. Can't go around it. I mean, it's out there. It's been out for a long time. 3 or 4 motion pictures made on it. Really good films too. The Philadelphia Experiment with Michael Paré, I recommend it highly. Not only because I know Michael, but it's a really good film. Justin, you've been real quiet here. Where are we with this? Where is this going?
Well, I kind of want to bring it back to your original question, which is why the internet was put forward, and what was this to sort of add another level up the subterfuge, the obfuscation, and to get us off kilter, because that's what I see as the grand conspiracy of them all, is to find as many ways to get us away from the truth, from our innate self as possible. So I could very well see these demons try to put information out there to see how well they can just completely steer a population away, see how well they could scrub a whole timeline away, whether or not that actually happened or not, and see how people react. So the people who still have that memory and are still certain of it are like, no, that's not right. I remember that differently. But here you've got a whole effective entourage of a way to completely scrub the internet of any sign of it and put out a whole different version of the truth as they claim to it. And all of it is just a sort of like satanic ritual, if you will, to get us further away from the truth and further away from our innate self. So I could very well see that as a possibility. And so, but I think it's a double-edged sword, because that might have been the intent of the internet to begin with. It was to give us this platform to sort of obfuscate our truth and control us in that sort of way. But it's been given into the hands of all of us to communicate. So it's fallen back on them, because people are able to verify a little bit more easily and uncover a little bit more things. So it goes both ways.
It's interesting. When I think of the internet, a movie title comes to mind, and it is exquisitely simple. Dazed and Confused is the name of the film. And when I think of the internet, Mikey knows what I'm talking about. And when I think of the internet, that's exactly what I think of. Dazed and Confused. It is just a cesspool, but a wellspring at the same time of incredible information. Again, it's, you watch the news back in 1965. You believed everything Walter Cronkite said, because by God, he was Walter Cronkite. Now, the news is telling you, don't listen to us. We're entertainment. The news. It's not the news anymore. It's entertainment. The news never garnered ratings before. I want people to get what I'm saying. They never garnered ratings before. Since when is the news in the ratings business? I'll tell you when. Since there's big money advertisers. That's since when. And that's the bottom line. It's entertainment. It's Fox News, which I'm preferable to. Right now, Fox News is not a news channel. It's an opinion channel. They cover the news in the morning. That's it. From 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. From 10 a.m. until midnight, every single personality with no exceptions, every single personality on Fox News is an opinion commentator. That's not me making that up. Go to Fox's own website. You can't, it's like I say all the time, Marianne, you can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up. Mikey's heard me say that a million times. How about that, Mikey?
It's a strange world. I was listening to you, and I think I'd like to hear more from the ladies tonight, because I just wanted to get some bullet points out there, but I'm really fascinated by what they have to say.
You've been kind of quiet, a little more talkative this week than the last time, but what say you about all this? I posed the question about the internet. What say you to this? Again, I'll ask you as I asked Justin, who are we and where have we come from and where the fuck are we going?
Well, like Mike, I think I came across the Mandela Effect probably in 2017, 2018. Mm-hmm. I was starting to look at it and see what it was about and whatever. And just like everybody else, how is it we've, as a mass of people, it's not just 1 and 2 people here saying, well, I remember Mandela dying. I remember how many different people did we hear died? Kirk Douglas, Jerry, or who would, I can't think of the.
Billy Graham. Yeah, they died and they didn't die. And then 10 years later, they died again. So at the same time, I think I've heard about Project Looking Glass. Now, is that the same as CERN or is that different? I think that's a different time jumping, that the time jumping was causing ripples. It is
different. Yeah, it is different. CERN, to their credit, I will say this, CERN, to their credit, is making no bones about what they do. And I'll give them kudos for that. Mm-hmm. They're telling you straight up, that they're nefarious. They're telling you. We're fucking around with space and time. And they've been doing this for years. It took to the CERN reactor is literally the size of a city. They started that. I don't know if you guys, I'm sure Justin knows, but do you know when they started work on that project? 1968. They started work on it in 1968. It is still today in 2021, still today not complete. It's still not complete. It's the literal size of a city. Let that sink in, okay? We're talking about a piece of machinery the size of a city, the size of Philadelphia. That's huge. That's huge.
So did these things all start at that point, or were they really going on all along, and now we've just become caught up with it? So now we're hearing more and more. And then
I have a theory about that, Marianne, and I'm going to share that theory with you. Mikey may understand my theory because Mikey understands my mindset, but the 2 people that are going to jump on this right away, I'll tell you right now, have been Justin and Shirley. Shirley's going to know. When I open my mouth, as crazy as this shit's going to sound, Shirley's going to jump right in on it. I'll tell you when I think all this shit started. I think it started in 1947 at Roswell, New Mexico. I think when everything came crashing down from the skies, a whole new world of secrecy opened up. Because here's what happened, and Shirley, tell me if I'm lying. Tell me if I'm lying. Girlfriend, you know I'm not lying. Here's what happened. The government, for the first time in history, acknowledged full disclosure. And then when they realized what they did, they went like this. They took the jar and put the cap back on it. Well, you know, look, once the worms are out of the can, it's pretty tough to put the can lid back on. You know, once you cut that thing off, it's damn near impossible to put the lid back on. That's what happened. And I think everything from that point, think about something. Shirley, think about this. And I'm going to give you the floor after this. The wealth of technology that sprung from 1947 forward into the future was unlike anything in the history of humankind. Before 1947, for all intents and purposes, we were still living in the Stone Age. Okay? I will stop there and let you continue.
Okay, I think you bring out several very, very good points. My understanding is Roswell, after the craft came down, they started doing a lot of reverse engineering, and that's a lot of where our cell phones have come from. A lot of our computers have come from. A lot of our different types of technology, and this is why they advanced so quickly. They had survivors, and my understanding, I can't prove this, is one did survive that is still helping with the government to this day. But what they did is then into Area 51, you start seeing disc, you start seeing more and more technology where not only are you seeing what they call UFOs, but a lot of the area, we have our own UFO craft starting to appear all over. The other thing I would like to bring up, and I'd be interested in Mike's opinion and yours, everyone's actually, Henry Miller wrote a book on the 0-point frequency weapons of the Germans, and it appeared that they were making very, very quick advancements with 0-point technology, with weapons, and this is why the Philadelphia experiment came into, because they wanted to fight that technology. And the other thing that about CERN, they are running at 8,192 qubits, which is twice the absolute safest of 4,096 qubits. In order to do their God particles, they have doubled it. And there was a scientist that kind of offered herself up. She wound up disappearing up into the CERN area, and then she came back down with no clothes on, unconscious, and they were never able to revive her. I think definitely this all connects. CERN connects with Roswell perfectly, and I think that this quest for weaponry, 0-point frequency weaponry, going more and more into the age of working with what I would call 0-point frequency. 0 point is a vacuum. Okay, it runs forward and it runs backwards, which could easily affect the consistency of our timelines in time and space to create, neutralize things and recreate from nothing into completely different timelines, which I believe
and surely that therein, surely that is absolutely eloquently put. And therein is the essence of what Mikey was talking about. That is CERN. That's what CERN, they have the ability to fast forward or fast reverse. Space-time continuum in a vacuum.
Yes.
They created the perfect vacuum. Think about what a black hole is. It's vacuum personified. It's vacuum purity. It doesn't get any better than that. Mikey, continue. You and Shirley go. Have that conversation.
What I was thinking is that one question that comes up a lot with the Mandela Effect researchers or people that are intrigued by it. I'm in a couple of Facebook groups online about Mandela Effect people that are really fascinated by it. And it's always a question of how come we're always having these debates about these pop culture things, you know, Fruit Loops versus Fruit Loops, F-R-O-O-T versus F-R-U-I-T. How come these little things are what come up? And my theory, just my own personal theory or thought is maybe because the big stuff, like was there 4 world wars instead of 2? Or was it the French-Irish War instead of the French-Indian War? You know, in things like that is because maybe those giant foundations of our collective memories or the history books, they're so big that for the common person, even if we were crossing through timelines, we wouldn't recognize those things because they're so big. So what we do recognize is these seemingly frivolous things about Fruit Loops and Berenstain Bears and The Thinker. Not that they're not important, but they're not life and death. And it's
Mikey,
very fascinating.
Stop right there, Mikey, because I'm going to throw it right back to you. They are critically important. That is the distinction. To take something as mundane as FROOTS versus FRUITS. Just the simplicity of those two things, the divide and conquer over such inane and stupid semantics as Fruit Loops versus Fruit Loops. If people are going to take the time and the energy and expel the air that it takes to fight over Fruit Loops versus Fruit Loops, then they will most certainly take up the larger mantle and fight over bigger things. You could, if you get, Mikey, I'll just take something that you and I are intimately familiar with.
Sure.
One of the pro wrestling groups on Facebook.
Right.
You know how pro wrestling fans are.
Sure.
Okay. If you misstate what they perceive to be a fact because they have it in their head that this is what happened.
Right.
If you correct someone over the December the 8th over December the 9th, you can get into World War III over that with some of these wrestling people on Facebook.
Sure.
Okay? And you know it.
Yep.
And that's why I got rid of them all. I did.
So,
and you know that to be true.
Is your thought that the Mandela Effect is a government-issued
divide and conquer?
It's a way to turn the commoners against each other so the elite continues to rule in shadows?
Here's how you win a war without firing a shot. By having the people kill each other so government doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Shirley, am I right?
Absolutely. And the other art of war is you take out their food supply. And food supply is also food for thought with confusion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
absolutely. Justin, jump in, brother.
I'd throw out that
far too long. Justin, why don't you tell me to shut up?
So I'm gonna throw a contrary perspective about the Roswell incident out there and say that is another example of another way to obfuscate from the truth. I don't think this was craft from out of this planet. This was secret technology that was either mistakenly or purposefully put out there and crashed in order to create.
Justin.
In order to, yeah, because I mean it's true. Because the whole coast to coast radio thing and all of this stuff that came later. I mean, it was very, very well meticulous and how they presented this information. It was very mainstream, but in this almost sort of like forbidden fruit kind of way, where we're going to tell you a little bit, but we're not going to tell you enough so that you're interested in it, but it's not, you're not really allowed to have it, and that's the lure. That's the lure to get people into this narrative.
Justin, you mentioned a show that I used to listen to religiously, Coast to Coast. Now, the host of that show currently is George Noory. The host of that show for years was a guy named Art Bell. Okay. Art Bell, a lot of people don't know this. Art Bell was a government information liaison. That's how he got into where he was at Coast to Coast. When he left the government, he got a job, basically as in some people say, Shirley, as a misinformation specialist. We can debate that all day long and probably have a fucking field day with it. But Justin, you understand what I'm saying, so continue. I think we're on the same page.
And so the technology that was released wasn't the result of aliens or whatever. This was Nikola Tesla's technology that was being kept and expanded upon. And that's why Nikola Tesla was never allowed to get any of his stuff out, because he tapped into the ancient technologies that we all knew as mankind, that had been hidden for so long.
Nikola Tesla. Talk to me about Tesla. I know a lot about him. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this. I studied Tesla when I was 12, 13 years old. I had a fascination with people like Tesla, Einstein, people like Alexander Graham Bell, as mundane as that would sound. So here's my question to you. Tesla, hero, victim, villain, a willing accomplice. What place is he? One, several, all, none?
Yeah, I mean, I would say he's very much a hero that was identified as discovering the truth of all truths, which is that we can tap into the magnetic field, which is the perpetual energy that all of our world, all of our universe runs on. And but instead, so a lot of times when people study Tesla, they focus on his early on in his career, where he did the whole stint with electricity and the conversation between him and Edison and all of that. But he was really on electricity for a very, very brief amount of time, and then he jumped over to magnetism, because that was where energy was. That was where we could really tap into it.
Well, to your point, and I'm going to throw it right back to you. To your point, what Shirley and I do, and what I've done for most of my life, is to tap into that magnetic field. That's basically what spirit is. Energy.
Exactly. And that's
it's the essence of life. Energy is the essence of life. You take the energy out of the body falls, but the spirit will continue to rise. In other words, once the body is done with this energy, it goes on to somebody else who needs energy. That's my belief. I've said that a million times. When the body falls, the spirit rises.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or to put it more like a buddy of mine likes to say it. When the body fails, the spirit sails. And I like that. That's pretty cool. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, so if we're getting into the magnetism and the frequencies. Just hold with me for a second. So
I'm holding, baby. I'm holding.
Can it be possibly think about these timelines and these shifts and the changes as an ascension issue, that we are ascending in our collective frequencies, and as a result, as our collective vibrations are going up, we're making changes willingly or unwillingly. That has nothing to do with the CERN or something else, but it's source, God, telling us, here we are. This is something that's tangible. It's noticeable now.
You tapped into something, Marianne. Sometimes
it happens.
Sometimes these gems just roll out of you. Justin, last week we talked about, and I'm glad that she brought it up. We talked about the spiritual element of all of this, and we should never lose sight of that. I happen to believe that Jesus was a real person. I also happen to believe that when Jesus resurrected, that he did so not necessarily in flesh, although I believe that there's substantial physical proof of that. But I clearly believe that he resurrected as an energy for real. Because if you believe the testing that they did on the Shroud of Turin, it was radioactive. That's factual, by the way. It's radioactive. You can take a Geiger counter and get a radioactive reading from the Shroud of Turin. That kind of energy only comes from one source, and that's a burst of energy, either emanating from the body or going into the body. So I'm looking at. One of the things I do is I read people. I'm looking at people. I'm looking at Justin, thinking to himself, "Are you for real, bud?" And I'm looking at Shirley, going, "Oh, I want in on this one." So go ahead, Justin.
Well, I mean, you mentioned being Jesus Christ being a real man, and I think that there's a lot of substance to Jeheshua, the character that Jesus Christ is largely based off of, being a real man, and there's a lot more to that story that we're not really told. But the way that I see Jesus Christ written within the Bible, it's more of a culmination of several ascended masters kind of meshed and molded together. And
do you believe Jesus is an alchemy?
And like an allegory, you mean? Or an alchemy?
An alchemy, a combination of many things.
Amalgamation. Yeah, I do. I think it's the representation of the one path that we are to follow, because there's two distinct paths we can follow in this reality, and one of them is the left-hand path towards AI and technology, and that's where they're doing with CERN and all of that kind of stuff. That's very much a path you can follow, and it leads to death, and not one I'd advise.
That's going, by the way, that's going to come crashing down in a big way, brother.
Yes, absolutely.
In
it has
a very big way.
The karmic laws, God's laws are very much firmly in place.
Yeah.
But the right-hand path and the true path, to the one towards ascension, is the path that Jesus Christ outlined, and the one that we're supposed to follow.
Yeah.
So his death and resurrection, I think, was more allegorical in the sense that we are supposed to let our physical 5 in-body chakras, we're supposed to let those die and cross the fiction, which is the cross from the throat into the third eye, crossing the fiction, and entering into that perpetual magnetic energy, which is the marrying of the Mother Earth with the Father above, and that's why Shirley loves the number 8 so much, because it's that perpetual scalar wave.
It's not an accident that he has the initials JC. And by the way, you kind of look like him a little bit too. Shirley, jump in on this one. I see you squirming in your chair over there, lady.
I'm on pillows. I think I need one of those chairs. And so here we go.
You need to get another pillow to raise your ass up. Go ahead.
Well, that certainly is a resurrection. Would that help? All right, here we go. Justin, this is something I found very interesting when some studies they did on the DNA in the Shroud of Turin. Now, they know that even so, now they can pull DNA from thousands and thousands and, zillions of years ago. And what they found is they only found the mother's DNA in with the Shroud of Turin, and they did not find any father's DNA.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I would really like your opinion right there.
Well, I think those sort of like proof-based reasons of why we look at things there's so much room for somebody coming in and inserting themselves and playing and obfuscating things to create whatever sort of narrative. So I think that leaves a lot open in that degree. So I can't say with any specifics on that.
Mike Messier, what do you make of that? The notion that, by the way, what Shirley said is absolutely true, that the Shroud of Turin does in fact contain human DNA, but only female human DNA, none from the male. What do you make of that? What does that tell you?
Well, was she saying that was from the parents, that the parents of the, basically confirming or advocating for Christ as a fatherless deity, if he had the mother's DNA? Is that what you're saying, Shirley?
Yep, that's exactly.
Yes, that's what they discovered. Yep.
Well, I mean, then that would be a case of maybe what we don't think to be the case a lot of times, of science backing up religion, in this case Christianity.
That's what I was waiting on.
Yeah, so
that's what I was waiting on, Mikey. You just went there. We are living, and Justin and Shirley and Marianne, because of your close proximity to each other and the fact that you often do shows together and listen to the same kind of shows. What Mikey just said, and Mikey, I'm going to throw it right back to you. What Mikey just said is absolute confirmation of what I believe our place in this time is. A couple of things going on here. Number one, I believe that we are in an amazing time of Christian revival, or not even Christian revival. Let's just call it spiritual revival. That's number one. Number two, I think finally full disclosure is at hand. I believe the origins of our species will be revealed in our lifetime. There'll be no guessing as to who we are and where we came from. You're shaking your head no. You believe that?
No, I'm saying
Oh,
spot
beautiful.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, because I believe that. I think we will know in our lifetime the essence of the origin of our species. And I think Darwin was wrong. You know, as much as I might look like a monkey, and I've said it before, you know, being short, fat, and wide, that doesn't mean that I came from a monkey. You know, it just means I hold hair better than other people.
Wasn't Darwin kind of misquoted, or don't people give Darwin's theory too much credence that Darwin actually believed that? He did present a theory.
You know, I've heard a lot about that, Mike. You know, I've actually heard that Darwin didn't believe his own shit.
Well, I think what Darwin offered was a theory, and if you do some research, I could be wrong, but there some elements of people took his theory and ran with it, and then somehow, in the nature of events, as time often happens, an agenda was in place, or perhaps a few agendas, and this theory that Darwin had became pushed as an accepted fact.
Well,
I don't particularly believe in it, to tell you the truth. I mean, to be honest with you,
Darwin didn't believe it either, Mikey.
Well, there's
and
that.
Darwin didn't believe it either. Here's the thing for people who don't understand it. Darwin's novella, I'll just call it what it is. It's a novella. The Origin of the Species. He wrote that because he was challenged to. He was believe it or not, he was at a party, as the intellectuals tended to do back then, and even still today. The intellectuals all gathered at parties, and they used to talk about, you know, waxing philosophical about what was important of the day. And he was challenged to back up his belief. He was believed to be an atheist, or not even an atheist. An agnostic. He was believed to be agnostic, not atheist. I'm sorry. So they asked him to back up his theory. You know, well, where do you think we came from? And who do you think we are? The questions that I asked at the outset of this program. Who are we? Where did we come from? Where the fuck are we going? That's basically what they asked Darwin. You know? So Mikey, do you have any answers to that question? You know?
Well, I guess first off, to say what was Darwin's response, I guess what you're saying, Angelo, that Darwin's response was, well, I'll show you guys. I'll come up
pretty
with
much,
theory. Right. And so the problem for me personally is that line that people often use, hey, if you put enough monkeys into a room with enough typewriters, they'll write Shakespeare. To me, as a writer myself, that's offensive, because I put a lot of time into writing my novel, Angelo, as you know. And whether it's my novel, Shakespeare, you know, any great author, Emily Dickinson, to say that a monkey or 10 million monkeys could, I mean, if you think about the amount of monkeys you would need to write one sentence, all the combination of letters to write one sentence, that would be a hell of a lot of monkeys to write one sentence. To write a paragraph. I'm going to scare you. To write a paragraph. Scare you, Mikey. Go for it.
You ready? I wrote 2 books. Okay.
But there's
used the typewriter on one of them.
Boy, thank you.
Wrote them out.
Oh, thank God I didn't have a typewriter to do a book.
Longhand, pen to paper.
The other thing, if I could, to really blow people's minds if they want to be blown, is just that the thing with, if you were to tell someone that, hey, you know what, before there was human beings, there was giant skyscraper-sized lizards that walked the earth and roamed around, and some killed each other, and some ate plants, and some were peaceful, and some had long necks, and some had little arms.
And I don't believe any of it.
And then a big meteor came and wiped them all out. And then a guy in a cave walked around with a beard and a stick, and he bonked people on the heads, and he chased a leopard. The things that we take for granted because we were told as children that dinosaurs existed, and then we saw Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, and we just take these things as fact. If you really challenge some of these things, the core of the things that we grow up with might be total BS. You know, so there's people, there are YouTube videos, and YouTube's a great tool for opening your mind a bit. There's YouTube videos that say that there were presidents, including African American or Black presidents, before George Washington. Because we had a country before we had George Washington. We were around for a while. It may not have been the independent United States of America, but there was somebody in charge. But we don't hear about those guys in charge, and the fact that some of them might have been Black. They don't discuss that.
Mikey, you mentioned something that's that as of late has been a sticking point with me personally and professionally, and that is YouTube. And we're going to talk about YouTube's role in Mandela and the false narrative. We're also going to talk about YouTube's role in COVID, because they are quite complicit. Believe me, they are quite complicit. Mikey and I are going to share some information with you tonight. We will not tell you where we got it, but I will assure you it is verified, documented, and factual. But I will tell you that YouTube, in as much as it is an amazing tool and one that we all use, no doubt about it, we all use it. It is a kind of a mixed bag of nuts. It's almost that. How do I want to say this? And necessary evil. Is that a way to put it, Justin?
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
Whatever has consciousness as life force. So the more consciousness you put into something, the more it becomes into a accepted reality.
And and Mikey and I have dealt with people who were directly impacted by YouTube. Our friend Mike Williams had to all but shut his YouTube channels down. In fact, he's directing all of his videos to a website that he owns the creative control over, is a way to say that. I'm actually toying around with leaving YouTube and going to Vimeo, because they have a little bit more leeway. And Mikey froze up.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, Mikey froze up. And his microphone's on mute and he can't hear me.
It seems like this last year has been the year where people are coming out with YouTubes. We've all been locked up for COVID. We have YouTube as an outlet. We're all learning truth from other people on the YouTube. And as a result, they're now shutting everybody down because they don't want to hear. They thought they were going to control us and keeping us home. And now we're being just the opposite. Justin's
Marianne, that is a great point of contention with some people. But for me, it's a blessing. And I want to tell you why.
Oh, it definitely.
People, those in power who thought that we'll just keep these people home and they'll go stir crazy and they'll go fucking nuts and, they'll kill each other, they'll kill their spouses and all this crazy stuff, okay? Here's what happened, and I think we're all in consensus and agreement. What happened is people found ways to exercise their mind because they couldn't exercise their bodies. They couldn't go out for the walk every day. They couldn't walk their dog like they wanted to without, and they couldn't be with other people. That's the most devastating effect, is the isolation. But the people responsible for this, well, I don't want to be them here in the not too distant future, because they're going to have some hellacious payback, big time.
That's a Mandela effect. That's a Mandela effect. They're going to have some splaining to do. Something that I hear has disappeared.
Yeah, it's I don't, like I said, I don't want to be them. No, I don't. It's interesting because Mikey segued into something, and I wish that he was still here. Mikey segued into something that's really critical. The notion that controlling the narrative And that's what YouTube does. You know, controlling the narrative controls the way you perceive their reality. You know, it's like if you throw enough shit up against the wall, some of it's going to stick. If you put a pile of trash next to somebody, after a while, they're going to start to smell like it.
Right.
You know, the narrative, it's a forced narrative. It's, oh, here's Mikey. There he is.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm back.
Brother, we lost you. Where'd you go?
Yep.
I had a technical issue.
Yeah, I was going to say, you froze up on us. I said, well, Mikey got frozen. So, yeah, I'm glad you're back. Because I just mentioned your name, and he froze up again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just mentioned your name, Mikey. We're talking about YouTube. So, Shirley, talk to us about, you know, the vibration. Let's talk about the vibrational impact and the frequency impact of this false narrative. There is and then you and I both know what it is, but I want you to share with the audience and each other what both the positive and negative impacts of energy, frequency, and vibration are from COVID and from Mandela.
All right, there's a couple of things here that I really think there is a huge difference between magnetic fields and electromagnetic fields.
Absolutely.
And in the magnetic fields are where we're more spiritually based. This is where we're reaching in frequency in order to, you know, being able to contact, you know, maybe the other side, to bring in very beautiful messages from loved ones, you know, mediumship, our psychic. This is magnetic. Electromagnetic also carries waves of communication, but they're almost more what I would call, it's almost like a tarnish on silver, you know, in the way they affect us. And what happens is when you get a bunch of electromagnetic fields pulling out all this information, it's going into our DNA. It is absolutely going, it's affecting a lot of the way our brain perceives things. Oh, and this also modifies and can change our DNA, because as we know, at the times before even internet or this kind of communications, people based things off of newspapers, what they read, word of mouth. Survival was the main thing that people talked about. Now, all this information is just slamming up against us in this barrage, and this is all going into our minds, a mind overload, going into our DNA.
I'll tell you what,
Shirley,
you mentioned that last week, and I took exception to that, and I still do. But I thought about something you said, and I did a little bit of research, and I backed it up with some research. I still contend, and follow me because you'll understand, and I think you all will. I still contend that it's not direct electromagnetic or magnetic field or frequency that's affecting the DNA. I think it's the incredible amount of aluminum and barium in the air.
That's interesting.
That chemtrails are being sprayed crisscross across the country. They have for the last 20 years, largely unnoticed, except for the last probably 10, 12 years or so.
So
really
they're brain fogging us.
A lot of information.
Us.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm going with it. I think there's an effect, but I think it's a secondary effect from energy, and not not from example, you know, holding your cell phone close to your head or standing in front of the microwave oven. Go ahead, Mikey.
Well, I would say that it's almost like a combination of the two, because the more heavy metals they can insert into our bodies, the more we turn into these antennas where we're more easily
I would agree with that, Justin. That's a perfect way to put it. I would agree with that, absolutely. Because I didn't want to come across, because I watched that show back, and I came across as being a little harsh to Shirley, and I didn't want to do that, but. And I still don't believe that it's a direct, electro thing. I think it is secondary, but clearly atmospheric. And I believe it's food and air, because we're directly consuming that.
I think that changes how we perceive information. So I think that's something I wanted to add.
Absolutely, that you will not get an argument at all. Not from me, kiddo. I believe that. Mikey, say you what to this? The knowledge that chemtrails, energy, electromagnetic energy, atmosphere, and food are affecting our DNA, our thought process, our the way we're doing work, the way we speak to each other.
I'll tell you this, about 10 years ago, I had a microwave oven in my apartment and I threw it in the dumpster one day, and I didn't eat food from a microwave as much as possible for many years. And if you really think about it, what is a microwave oven? What type of energy is that using? I mean, it's if you really think this is not heating up food on a pan or on a fire or in an oven, it's some type of weird energy. And I think a book was published. I saw this on TV the other night. A book was published about the potential dangers of eating microwave cooked food, and the book was quickly hush-hushed. So there are many things. There's a documentary I watched the other day on YouTube, Angelo, called "Who Killed the Electric Car?" And this was like in the 2005, 2006 in California.
Yeah,
they had this great electric car that could really help save the.
Yeah. Then not only did they kill the car, they killed the guy that invented the car.
Yes.
The car manufacturers, they killed the electric car, and I believe now we're starting to see some resurgence. Unfortunately, what we all find out is that a lot of decisions are made from people way above our levels of power and influence, that the decisions that are benefiting someone maybe, but not most people. And why are these decisions being made? Usually it's out of greed. Usually it's out of the elite wanting to stay the elite, the powerful wanting to stay the powerful. And you wish that even if they kept their greed, kept their greedy ways, they would have some inclination to keep humanity going, if nothing else. And
well, they're going to keep humanity going, Mike. They're going to keep their humanity going.
Right.
Remember, the old adage was that incest is best. And here's what I mean by that. They got to keep the bloodline. You can't marry out of the bloodline. You can't associate with the commoners. The Bilderbergs and the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, they are one giant incestuous Tennessee clusterfuck.
Yep.
Okay? They're all related. They're all related.
And it's not good.
If I want to show you, I'm going to send you a list, and you probably all have seen it. Nancy Pelosi, her son is married to the governor of California's daughter. Okay. She works for Barack Obama. Bill Clinton's daughter, Chelsea, married a guy that works for some big fucking Bilderberg type group. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is they're all in bed with each other. You can't marry outside the bloodline, okay? It's like you can't make this shit up. I mean, you really can't. I'm going to send you the list.
I'd like to test.
I forgot how the breakdown is, but I've got this giant list. I'm going to send it to you. What are you laughing at, Mary?
I said I'd like to test that blood.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell
Probably
you,
blue.
you'd be surprised.
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
You know, you may not be surprised. True. But I'll tell you what, man, this has been a fast. Go ahead, Mikey.
There was a movie I saw yesterday. It was actually a great movie called My Zoe.
He froze up again. What was it called, Mike?
Spoilers, because I don't. The movie is called My Zoe. My Zoe.
Oh, My Zoe. Okay. Yeah, you're breaking up, Mike. Yeah, he's breaking up again. I wish. Oh, damn. So
I like to bring something up that we can interject until he comes back on.
Please, yes, please.
The negative bloodline. The negative bloodline only appeared within the last 5,000 years. It doesn't carry the Riesling in it, and nobody really knows where that came from. And most of the royal line carries what they call kind of the blue blood, the negative bloodline, and also 98% of our presidents also carry this bloodline. And whereas Absolutely. It kind of makes you wonder, I'm kind of interested in your thoughts on that, why that bloodline would be so different.
Well, I can tell you that every president that's ever been elected and every president who will ever be elected was chosen long before they knew they were going to run. I will tell you that emphatically. That I know that. I can't tell you how I know that, but I know that. I wish we could get Mikey back because we want to share some COVID stuff with you. Really important stuff too. I might have to wait till next week to do it. Let us reconvene. Before we do, I didn't get it. I was so excited for last week's show. I didn't give a chance for you guys to promote yourself. Justin, I'm going to start with you. Promote Justin Carpenter.
All right. Well, we do. Let's see. I've got a YouTube channel, Wandering Toward Truth, and right now we've got weekly shows with Charlie Freak, if you're familiar with him, and a few others. We've got weekly shows on Sunday evening where we decode the greatest songs ever. So we take songs from the 60s, 70s, and 80s of these Gnostic warriors that really inserted just beautiful gnosis within these songs. And we're really uncovering God within them. And it's all about God, meditation, and this path that we're supposed to follow.
Beautiful.
And so it's really cool breaking those down. And then on Wednesdays, we do a Bible study, which I hesitate even calling it a Bible study just because of the stigma that people get with that idea. But this is like, we're uncovering all of the lies.
Screw them. Call it a Bible study. Call it what it is.
Well,
truth and advertising.
Right.
Look, I'm all about truth and advertising.
Yeah.
If it's a Bible study, don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. Call it a Bible study.
Yeah, well, it's really taking all of the false teachings of the church and disregarding those and really getting to the nuts and bolts of what this beautiful book is and how it does what it does for us. So yeah, that's me.
Marianne, where can people reach you?
People can reach me. The Shadow of a Baseman. The book is on Amazon first off, and then we have the Shadow of a Baseman at gmail.com if anybody wants to reach out to me or Anne. And then we're on Facebook, of course, under our own names. And then we have the Facebook page for the Shadow of a Baseman as well.
Beautiful. Excellent. Shirley, call me a psychic Bolstok. Go ahead,
That's
Shirley.
going to be my new website. I love it.
There you go.
Anyway. I do have a website. It's still a little bit under construction called Activate, but the best way to reach me is by email, poet444@gmail.com.
Beautiful. And Mike Messier.
Mike Messier.
People reach Mike Messier.
Mike
Perhaps
Messier.
at MikeMessier.com. He froze up again. Mike, you go.
I'll be on the show with Angelo a few more times in the month.
Oh, you're going to be with me a lot more times, brother. I'm keeping your ass busy.
MikeMessier.com. And I was just saying that the movie in question was My Zoe. Predictive programming is what I was getting at.
Yeah.
If people are familiar with that term and
Absolutely.
so on and so forth.
Absolutely. And you can reach me everywhere podcasts are heard. You can find me at wrestlingwiththefuture@gmail.com. You can find me at hashtag Mob Talk on Instagram. I am at Mob Talk, at Wrestling with the Future, at Psychic Angelo. You can reach me on Facebook at all of the above. I am on we're on 171 platforms across the world right now. It's crazy. We're just about to hit our 5 millionth download. I want to thank, God bless them. I want to thank manscaped.com for all the work that they do. We don't take their money, but they do things for us that you can't pay for. I mean, straight up, you just can't pay for that kind of advertising. Until next time. And by the way, Tuesday, Mike Messier and I will join former Mafia enforcer John Costello. He is the author of the book called Executive Hoodlum. an amazing book. And we will also next week be joining a roundtable discussion on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. That's going to be a good one. I might call upon one or two of you guys to join me on that show. Maybe Shirley, to see what kind of feel you get for who actually pulled the trigger.
Huh.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
That'll be interesting because I know it wasn't Oswald. I can tell you that.
It will.
Nope.
But Mikey, before I let you go, I shared with everybody that you and I have some information to share on COVID.
Right.
So please do that.
Well, this is what I heard from someone. I'll just say it's a person that I've known for about 6 months who works for one of the 3 major companies that are distributing the vaccines.
Yeah.
And basically what she told me was that in December of 2019, some of her coworkers were working in Wuhan, China, and they were coming home after, working over in Wuhan, and they were coming home sick with what they thought at the time.
Oh no, he didn't freeze.
Turned out to be
shit.
Hello? Turned out to be.
You just froze up. Damn.
Am I here now?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, so basically,
Push it out quick, Mike.
these coworkers came back with COVID-19, and the thought is that COVID was not from a bat, from a wet market, people eating bats or any other animals that they shouldn't have been eating. It was from bioengineered testing, the Chinese testing their own people, and did not keep the people that they were testing under wraps or under surveillance well enough. And this bioengineered or chemically engineered, whatever you want to call it, biogenetically engineered disease, man-made disease, not nature-made disease, is the idea.
Exactly.
That's why the Chinese, apparently, if this theory is true, were so hush-hush and so private about it and not releasing this information to the World Health Organization and so forth. Joe Rogan's been talking about this, and here we are talking about it. But beyond that, not many people or mainstream media are talking about it.
I'll tell you who was talking about it, but nobody listened to him.
You?
Donald Trump.
Okay.
Yep.
Donald Trump was talking about it. Nobody listened to him. They did everything they could to shut him up.
Well,
And all the other YouTube channels that they took off the air because they were talking about it too, just mentioning the words,
And therein is my problem with YouTube, but we're going to actually talk about social engineering through social media. That's going to be, can I assemble this group again?
sure.
Can we, because I love having you guys here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Can we
That's good.
assemble?
Absolutely.
Okay, terrific. Well, for everyone, for Justin, I'm just going to call him JC. For JC, for MA, for Pillow Talk, I'm going to call her Pillow Talk. I don't know why. Shirley just reminds me of Pillow Talk. And for Marvelous Mike, the movie maker Messier, I'm Angelo DeCipio. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Be kind to each other. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.